We're back with another edition of the IPS Take. Today we're talking NC State men's basketball. Darrion Williams picked the Wolfpack last week. Big time addition out of the transfer portal for NC State. We're going to be discussing that today. We're actually posting this one on our YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, please subscribe at Inside Pack Sports on YouTube. We typically make these premium on our website at InsidePackSports.com. So we're going to do a free one here today to give folks a chance to check it out. I've got my guy Jake McSwain with me to discuss Mr. Williams. Jake, how you doing?
Doing good, man. It's coming off of a long weekend with some good basketball news, so timing can't be better.
Big time week for NC State. And look, we know this was a huge pickup. NC State, before we really get into Williams specifically, Jake, over the last week or two, we know what NC State's been focused on. The last couple of weeks, it's been all about landing one of two players, either Darrion Williams from Texas Tech or PJ Hagerty from Memphis. State had to land one of those guys. They needed a big-time addition. I know there was a window there, 2-3 weeks, where we assumed that guy was going to be PJ Hagerty. And then the momentum shifted last week to Darrion Williams. And for NC State, how do you view those two players, before we get into Williams specifically, how do you view those two players against each other and ultimately the fit for NC State?
Yeah, so, I've said it before, but I think Williams is someone who raises the floor of your season higher than a Hagerty would. Like, he's such a known commodity. You've seen it over 2 years at a higher level of competition. He's played on winning teams. So, with that in mind, it's just like he's going to be somebody who you can bank on, like absolutely bank on, what he's going to bring. When you look at PJ Hagerty, like the ceiling might be a little higher because I feel like PJ Hagerty has some more in his game where he could step up, become more of an efficient player. Like there's some obvious growth room that you see with him that I just don't know that Williams has that necessarily where he's going to take this huge leap forward. But again, on the flip side, like a guy like Hagerty could flame out too. I mean, and flame out's a relative word, but he could just be wildly inefficient, have aspirations of trying to put something on tape for the NBA, and things could go south. Like there's a possibility, while it might be a low one, in my mind for that happening. I don't know if you have similar thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because with both of these players, I know there was some hope out there among the fan base that NC State would be able to land both. That was never going to happen financially. We've done multiple pieces here over the last month or two, looking at what NC State was doing out of the transfer portal. And just from a budget standpoint, you probably barely had enough money to get one of these guys, right? Much less two, because they're coveted. They're, two of the top 3, 4, 5 players in the portal, I would say. You agree with me on that? I mean, Darrion Williams was the first team all Big 12 player, led Texas Tech to Elite 8. I mean, PJ Hagerty, Conference Player of the Year, 21 points per game. Obviously, both of these guys were highly coveted. What I think is interesting is, looking at it from NC State's perspective, how would each impact the others on their roster? Because this wasn't a deal where the first move NC State made was, let's get Darrion Williams or PJ Hagerty and build around them. It was actually the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
They had the entire roster pretty much in place outside of maybe one piece, which is essentially, we know they're still looking to add a 5-man. But outside of that one piece, they actually have the entire roster together. So I think when I look at the two in comparison to each other, I think both are great talents. Both bring a lot to the table. Both check a lot of boxes. It's almost kind of a one-for-one deal. The question for me became, which impacts the other guys on the rosters more? And I think if you're looking at NC State's potential, PJ Hagerty would have negatively impacted that more. Because, at least in my opinion, I want to get your take on this, because I think there's so much upside built into State's roster, but it's mainly at Allen Breed, Matthew Abel, Paul McNeil. And those are 3 players who you probably would agree with me would be negatively impacted had Hagerty picked NC State. Whereas if you look at it from the 4 position, really the only true 4 you've got on the roster right now, Jerry Dean.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, in terms of true 4. And so I think from that standpoint, adding Williams and now allowing Breed and Abel and McNeil to potentially hit, is where I think you may see a little more upside for State, even though you've got that floor increase with Williams.
Yeah, and I think that from that perspective, like having Williams as opposed to Hagerty creates more opportunity, to your point. Like a guy like Alan Breed is going to have more chances to make a positive impact. And Trey Holloman's going to have that chance to take the next step. Guys like Abel and McNeil, there's just going to be more, like maybe probably more net shots to go around, but also there's just going to be, more of a reliance on other guys to score the ball. And I don't want to bury this by saying, Williams isn't a good scorer in his own right, because he is, right? I mean, he's scored, like, he is a reliable scorer and is going to lead NC State in scoring next year. I think that's a pretty fair projection to make. But at the same time, like from the guard spots, those guys have to be happy to see more opportunity coming their way. And I think when you've mentioned it several times, but Williams is no slouch in creating opportunities for other. In fact, I don't know Hagerty's assist rate off the top of my head, but I would assume he created more shots for teammates than Hagerty did. Talking about Williams.
Yeah, I think that's where, to me, Williams really makes his money for NC State is his shot creation. I know we haven't did this yet. We're going to do a film room on him later on and look at kind of the different ways he can impact. But one of the things that stood out to me watching his tape back is there's some DJ Burns to his game in terms of extended mid-post touches, in post-up touches in the mid-post to where he's backing his defender down, scanning the floor, looking to find shooters, looking to make a play before looking to score. And it's just a different way to create shots. And I think you're right. Hagerty was really good in his own right in terms of assists. I mean, last year he had a 20% assist rate, which is a solid number. I mean, PJ Hagerty is an extremely talented offensive player on the college level. There's no denying that, right? I mean, I don't think there's any denying that. But
he's good.
Really good. I mean, look, we were thinking for a couple of weeks that he would be a guard at NC State. But I think when you look at Darrion Williams and the fact that at 6'6", 240 pounds, he's giving you a 23% assist rate with just a 14% turnover rate. Obviously, he can. And I think the thing that separates him from me more than anything else, Jake, is I feel like regardless of the other four players on the roster on the court, he can find a role. Oh, yeah. Right? Like he can fit. Like if you want to play ball screen action with a 5-man and Trey Holloman or Alan Breed, then Darrion Williams can play your stretch 4, your spot up 4-man and your floor spacer. He can work out of the mid-post. You can give it to him in isolation situations. He can go one-on-one and try to score. You can use him as a roll man. You can use him as your pick and roll man and let him work a short roll and make plays. Or there's so much versatility to his game. Whereas, in comparison to Hagerty, it felt like a lot of times with Hagerty, it was going to be give him the ball, let him run your offense, which is great.
Yeah, and he can do it.
Yeah, and he can do it. He can do it. And trust me, I mean, I would have been perfectly fine if NC State added that. But I think when you look at just everything that Williams impacts, not to mention he's graded out as a very good defensive player as well. I mean, this is just I think a home run pickup for NC State.
Yeah, and to give you some more context around how he was used at Texas Tech last year, when you look at the percent of time he spent in different types of plays, Synergy breaks that down for us. So just as a spot up shooter, that's what he acted as 20% of the time. He got in the post about 20% of the time. He was actually a pick and roll ball handler 16% of the time, did well in transition, was a roll man about 10% of the time, could put him in isolation around 10% of the time. And I mean, so he's someone when you're trying to game plan him as an opposing coach, it's hard, right? Because I mean, it's to me, when you think about familiar faces for NC State, if you think about how Dontrez Styles was kind of used last year, the potential of how you could have used him, he's like a much better, and no disrespect to Dontrez Styles, but a much better version of that. Like he can do all of those things probably a little bit better, and in some cases a lot better. And I think he's going to have a coach this year that's really dialed into the analytics of how to respond to what teams try to do. Because you're going to be in a position when you're NC State next year of how are teams trying to guard him? Are they putting, their 4-man? Are they putting someone on him who's a little bigger? Like how can we exploit the matchups that he's going to get on defense? And I think that's an exciting proposition when you pair that up with a coach like Will Wade, who's going to be able to, kind of pull those levers maybe a little more efficiently than what State's been used to.
Yeah, I did not realize he was used 19% of the time as a post-up player. I mean, that's your low post offense right there. And it's just a way of inverting it. Now, when could NC State, you think about like kind of importing that into NC State's offense. When could NC State best use that? Let's say you want to play Jerry Ding as a 5-man some.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now what do? You let him space the floor at the 5 position. You've got Darrion Williams posting up a 4-man. Help comes, you've got a kick out there. You've got the floor spacing you want around him. So, I mean, that's what I mean in terms of the versatility he provides. And I think we can talk a lot about his game. And like we said, we're going to do a film room on him as well. The other thing I think with this, Jake, is it gives NC State star power. It gives NC State a mega name to go into the season with some real buzz about. If there was ever any doubt about NC State being a top 30, top 25 team going into the year, I think adding Darrion Williams changes that, because he gives you that guy who could be, I don't know, like I haven't had a chance to really sit down and look at the rest of the ACC in terms of what everybody's bringing back. I imagine we'll do that later on this summer. But like I said, he's first team all Big 12 last year, led Texas Tech to an Elite 8. Big 12 was viewed as a better league than the ACC last year. So if he was one of the top 5 players in that league, where is he going to fit in the ACC, right? Like, this is a guy who could be a top 2 or 3 player in the league next year.
Yeah, you'd have to imagine he's preseason first team all ACC, right? I mean, coming off, I mean, like, I don't see how he's not. But I mean, I think the question is, though, is how do those other players for NC State get valued when people are putting together their preseason, top 25 rankings? And that'll be really interesting to me, because there's players that, had you asked me before the portal cycle started, like, what are your thoughts on Jerry Ding? I probably wouldn't have known. I would have had no idea who he was, just because I didn't watch much Florida State last year, and that's kind of one of the joys of portal basketball season. But at the same time, like, when you start to look at it from a big picture and get more familiar, I think the image of what they're trying to do becomes crystal clear. And I'm not sure how that translates to a national perspective. I think Will Wade has some gravitas there where, people will pay attention based off of their ability to land a guy like Darrion Williams. And I think that's where it becomes so important is, that brings more clout to what they're trying to say about the program.
Yeah, I was looking at the first team all ACC from this past season. You had Cooper Flagg, NBA, Maxime Renaud, NBA, Chucky Hepburn graduated, Chase Hunter graduated, and Hunter Salas declared for the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
So all 5 of your first team selections from this past year have moved on. Second team, RJ Davis has moved on. Ian Shefflin has moved on. Con Knipple has moved on. And Jameer Watkins has moved on. The only one returning is Marcus Burton from Notre Dame, I think. Like, I haven't double checked. I'm pretty sure Marcus Burton is returning. So maybe Marcus Burton would be your, I know he had a big year for Notre Dame. Maybe he could be your preseason ACC player of the year, depending on who else someone's added. But like, when you look at the league, there's been a lot of turnover in terms of who they had last year. Now, we know a lot of these teams have gone out and did a great job of adding players. So there's going to still be plenty of talent in the league. But I think Darrion Williams might be the cream of the crop, because if off the top of my head, I don't believe, maybe one of the Boozer boys, I don't believe there's like a Cooper Flagg type coming into the league, where I think last year, Jake, I know last year I had Cooper Flagg my ACC preseason player of the year. And that was with RJ Davis returning. Didn't matter, right? You kind of knew what Cooper Flagg was going to do. But I don't feel like there's that expectation for Boozer this year to be like that type of an impact player.
Oh yeah. Cooper Flagg was a generational talent. Like, you can't project that type. He was a little easier to project than a lot of guys. So I don't know that there's going to be a freshman for a few years that's going to come in with this guy's going to be the best player in the league and probably in the country. Well, no, almost definitely in the country. So yeah, I think, you look at some of the other top tier talent that's returning. I think Lowe, the point guard for Pitt, he transferred out. He's at Kentucky now, I want to say. So, Kentucky. So, the opportunity's there. And Williams is coming to a conference that has been a premier conference in the past. So I think a big opportunity to come in and put his name in consideration for a potential all first team player of the year type of season.
Is there any sort of concern you have with NC State adding Darrion Williams? I mean, when you look at his profile, is there anything that maybe is viewed as a weakness that maybe folks could be overlooking? Because obviously we know we're looking at a lot of the strengths and all those things, but is there something there that you think could be something we could look back on and say, okay, that was a potential concern with bringing Williams in?
Well, yeah, I think for me, and one of the reasons I was high on Hagerty and his fit with this NC State team is when you think to an end of game situation where you need a bucket and you need to tie the game, win the game, something along those lines. The game plan was pretty clear for my mind is give the ball to PJ Hagerty. Let him create, make something happen, or find someone else that's open when a defense overcommits. I think when you shift in and put Williams in his spot throughout the course of the game, the impact's going to be largely the same, but I don't know that Williams is built to get the ball in his hands, try to get a bucket if you really, really need one. And if that's not the case, and if that's something where it's a little more open to interpretation or open to making a plan at the last minute, I'm not sure who that player is going to be. But that would be my one concern.
I wanted to ask you, when you look at this decision from Darrion Williams' standpoint, we know he was looking at Kansas, he was looking at Ohio State, considered by many to be the top player available in the portal. Probably really could have picked whoever he wanted to, if we're being honest, right? In terms of just showing up and going, everybody would have taken him. What do you think appealed to him with NC State?
Well, I think the opportunity to come in, be the face of a program that has some momentum right now. I'm sure that there was some level of sell from Will Wade around his ability to use him to the maximum of his potential based off of the analytics that they use and how the metrics that they track and scout and get guys in positions to do what they do really well. Probably more of an offensive minded system than he's been in the past few years as well. Texas Tech, largely historically defensive first program, really tries to stifle things. But I think, when you look at the team that you put around him is you're going to, allow him to operate within his skill set, but have capable complementary players that really, don't let defenses game plan around him too much. I think that's really an important facet that might have been factored into the pitch to him as well. What do you think?
I think so. He did the NBA thing, right? He declared for the draft, went through the draft process. I'm not certain he got the feedback he wanted, because I think all of those guys that go through that process, if they get the feedback they actually want, they stay in the draft, right? So I don't think he got the feedback he wanted. And I think when you're a player like him, where you've been in college now 3 years, you've been wildly successful. We know 2 years ago he led Texas Tech to the NCAA tournament where they were knocked out by NC State. Last year led them to the Elite Eight, all those different things. When you've been that successful and you still haven't put yourself on that next level from an athleticism upside standpoint, now you just have to produce your way there, right? Like now you just have to make it where I'm too good of a college player to turn me down. That's where I think a lot of times these seniors put themselves on the next level. Think back over the years that all the I'm saying old in air quotes, right? The old seniors who shouldn't get drafted because they're old. They still end up going first round, late first round, early second, because they were just so good on the college level. And I think if you're Darrion Williams, you're looking for an opportunity to put yourself in that position. I don't think it was at Texas Tech with them returning JT Toppin. I don't think it was going to be at Kansas with them adding Darian Peterson, who, we said it earlier, if there is a guy coming into college basketball close, or a couple, he'd be one of them to Cooper Flagg. Not saying he's Cooper Flagg, but in terms of just top 1-2 players in the country, him and probably the kid going to BYU, those are the two guys. And so I think for Williams, it's the chance to go to NC State and right away put the program on a different level. Mm-hmm. It's odd we're saying different level when you just won the ACC champ, all of those things. But still, you get where I'm coming from, to help this program right away under Will Wade to get to that next level. He comes to NC State and they're top 3 in the ACC, and he's ACC Player of the Year, that's going to help his draft stock really more than anything he does at a Big 12 school like a Kansas, where maybe he's their second biggest name.
Yeah, your fingerprints have to be all over the success of next season, right? Like, and to your point, that's how you get drafted. That's how you make a case, because there's really, from a just pure final numbers standpoint, there's not much he can do outside of averaging 25 a night or something crazy that is maybe not in his capabilities. But I think, to your point, he's definitely got some potential to come in and be the guy, not a guy, but the one that does have their fingerprints all over success.
Let's talk about NC State's roster here now that you have Darrion Williams in the fold. When you look at it for NC State, you're currently sitting at, I have them with 11 players committed for the upcoming season. Pull this up again to make sure I've got that right. Actually, it's 12 because you're adding in Jamie Kontinuimi, the guard from Finland, the freshman who committed. So you're at 12 scholarship players. You've got one scholarship left. I think you're on board with me. The expectation is that one spot's going to go to a post player. Let's say whatever, you can say Paul Mbaye is your starting center, whoever the next guy you use, but one of those two guys will be starting the center. Give me your starting lineup for NC State after the addition of Darrion Williams.
Okay. So we've done a few iterations of this, and I think where I've settled and what I really like is you got Holloman at the 1, Breed at the 2, Arsenault at the 3, and I feel like all of those are fairly locked in at this point, I would say. Williams at the 4 and Mbaye at the 5. And then from there, and I know you asked about the starting lineup, but I'll jump ahead for a second. I think the options coming off the bench are just really attractive for NC State, because you can change the way your game is going or the way teams have to guard you with how you make your substitutions. So if you want to go shooting heavy, you could, bring in Ding off the bench and have him either come in for, a guard and shift Williams up to the wing. You could have him come in for Mbaye and really kind of come into a small ball type of lineup. You have other capable shooters on the bench that can come in and make things happen. You could bring Copeland in for Holloman, or Copeland in for somebody else and shift Holloman down and just make it a more defensive minded lineup. Just the options you can really plug and play based off the situation you find yourself in. And I don't think that's been the case a lot for NC State, and really across the board in college basketball. I think teams get really pigeonholed into their 7 or 8 guys, and then this is how you play. You know what I mean? And this is how your game flow is going to go if you're going to be successful. And I don't think that's going to be the situation NC State finds themselves in next year.
When you look at this roster, give me the biggest strength you see when you look at how it's currently constructed.
Yeah, for me, it's versatility. So across the board, you have guys that can play up and down the lineup. Even when you start talking about McNeil and Abel, those are 2 guys that can come in and be kind of off-ball, spot-up threats. I think you could shift McNeil down the lineup even further, maybe even Abel, but really capable defenders. So for me, that versatility from a defensive standpoint, and what a guy like Copeland does for you specifically as well, being able to come in, guard multiple positions, play multiple roles within the offense. Like everyone outside of, I would say, Mbaye right now can play 2 to 3 positions at the very least. And Holloman might be thrown in there as well, but Holloman can be an off-ball shooting threat if he needs to be, if Breed can handle the ball more, if someone else can step up and hold down that primary ball handler responsibilities. But just the versatility is to me the biggest strength of this roster as constructed right now.
What about your concern?
I think shooting could be the one concern here. And now I know that there are a lot of capable shooters on the roster. Like Arsenault last year was a capable shooter. Williams was a capable shooter. Holloman was decent, was really good 2 years ago. Last year regressed a little bit. Mbaye is a non-shooter. Copeland's a non-shooter. Breed's the wild card, right? So it's really might rest on the laurels of Allen Breed, and if he's as good of a shooter as Will Wade seems to think that he is, because if that's the case, that takes all of the pressure off of this argument, and you're fine. Now your bench has more of that in Ding and Abel and McNeil, but it's like if those are guys that aren't going to play huge roles, you know, at least initially, then where's that shooting come from? Like you don't have a true knockdown perimeter shooter on the roster. And I think that could be a bit of a concern and make you somewhat easier to guard.
I'm surprised you didn't pick the 5, right? Because of it right now having Mbaya. I wanted to ask you, what if NC State didn't add another 5-man? What if they only went with Paul Mbaya, Jerry Ding, and Mikey Wilkins? And maybe they added, let's say they struck out on Vin Allen Lubin, and maybe they added just a free, you know what I'm saying, a guy late in the process to be like a depth piece who you're not expecting to play. How would you feel about that situation?
I mean, there are games where that would hurt you for sure. I mean, like if you have a play in a big who can actually play and do things, then yeah, that could cause you some trouble on certain possessions. But I think I might be higher on Mbaya than most. I think he's going to be, for what NC State's looking for, is just a plug and play fit. I think he's going to provide big productions from a counting stats perspective, and I think he'll benefit from some of the spacing that NC State can put around him. I really do think you can steal a lot of minutes. I mean, like with Williams too, one of the other benefits is he's going to help you out on the boards. Like he's a willing rebounder. He gets in there. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's strong. He does rebound well. So that's a positive. So if you pair him up with a Ding at the 5 and, you know, or even like if Copeland were to shift down and play some small ball 5, like, I mean, I know that he's pretty small, but like, again, he's athletic, rebounds the ball well. I think there are ways you can play around that. Wilkins can steal you some minutes at times. Like, I don't know, the big man role in college basketball today. Like how many times have we seen NC State play teams that are just trotting out 6'8", 6'9" guys up and down at the 5? You know what I mean? You just see it all the time. So it's not that huge of a concern. Like you're not playing that many 7-foot bruisers who want to just back you down every possession. You don't see it all that often.
Yeah, I think it's a way to it would be potentially a way to get Jerry Dean more minutes because, you know, we talked about it earlier. Guys like Matthew Abel, Alan Breed, and Paul McNeil benefited in a sense from adding Darrion Williams instead of PJ Hagerty. Well, who did not benefit from it? Well, you're looking at Jerry Dean, Quadir Copeland, maybe Colt Langdon, guys like that who were slotted. Maybe if you're going to play Terrence Arsenault some as a small ball 4, how much more would you do that now? Because, you know, Darrion Williams is going to be locked into 30 minutes a night at the 4 position.
Yeah, he's playing.
Yeah, and so that leaves 10 minutes there. And so then the question becomes, well, where do you generate the additional minutes for Jerry Dean that you want to have? I think it could be at the 5 position. I mean, can you play him Mbaya or whoever you have at the 5, 25 minutes a night and let the other 15 go to Dean? And then you're now up to 20, 25 minutes a night for him, kind of right in that wheelhouse you want him to be at. So I think it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing if NC State only rolls with Mbaya and Ding and Wilkins and tries to just say, you know what, that's good enough. But I think it would be it'd leave you a little uneasy, right? A little concerned, a little scared, worried. What about injury? Different things like that. But if you can make it through from an injury perspective, should be fine.
Yeah, you should be. And the injury thing is so impossible to predict. I don't really factor that in much. Somebody will get hurt, but I mean, you can always see what happens there. I do think you'll see a lot of Williams sliding down or up the lineup as well. So not necessarily only being at the 4. I think he'll get some time on the wing as well. You know, especially as the rotation gets trimmed down, as the season gets more competitive, you'll probably see him playing with like a Ding and Mbaya at the same time, which I actually really like that lineup for NC State. If you were to have like a Holloman, either one of Breed, McNeil, Abel, and then Williams, Ding, and Mbaya, because I feel like that provides a lot of spacing as well.
Yeah, to your point, this past year at Texas Tech, I mean, Williams played some time with JT Toppin and Federico at the same time. And so you can play him some at the 3 position. So look, We talked a lot about Darrion Williams. We talked a lot about his impact on the roster, all those different things. You can't deny it, though. This is a big-time addition for NC State. This was the player we think they coveted the most in the transfer portal. We're going to have a film room up here later on Darrion Williams. We just wanted to get together today and give you some thoughts in this edition of the IPS Take on NC State's latest commitment out of the transfer portal, Texas Tech forward Darrion Williams. As always, we'd like to thank you for joining us. Make sure you subscribe at Inside Pack Sports here on YouTube. And yeah, for Jake, myself, talk to you again soon.